Hi, in this video we are going to learn how to use the editor control using the MVC Razor syntax. What I have is a standard Visual Studio 2010 ASP.NET MVC project, and I've done some work in order to set up my classes and model and controller. So let's go ahead and check it out. So in my model, what I have is a person class with some just standard properties, class person, the string first name and last name and age, a date time, and a decimal property and a long property for phone. And what I'm doing in my index view, which is the first view that gets loaded, is that I am creating a person object that's in my model and setting up the properties, the first name, the last name, and all the other property settings, and just passing that to my view, which is basically the index view that gets loaded as a default for ASP.NET MVC applications. So I haven't done any work in the CS HTML file, so let's go in there and write some Razor code to bring in that person object and display its first name in the editor control. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you how to instantiate a standard text editor control. In this case, we're not going to bind to the person object. So I'm going to do HTML.InfoGistics. Now you can see that I'm using IntelliSense and I'm getting everything out of the box. What I've done is I've done some work to preset the application to use all these InfoGistics helpers, and you can see that there's a using statement up here which basically tells the DLL to be loaded into the view, and then the IntelliSense gets populated. There's another video on it, how to set up your project. If you're not familiar on how to get this IntelliSense support and all the required references, I would strongly recommend checking the video out. So once we have all that set up, I can just kind of go through and write my Razor syntax. So we have HTML InfoGistics.TextEditor, and I can just come in here and I can start setting some properties to it. So I can set null text, which is the value that gets loaded if there's no text in the editor. So I'm going to set enter some text, and then I'm going to set up some validation rules to it. So I want it to be a required field. So I'm going to set .required to be true, and I also want to set some validator options so that the validator kicks in at the right time. So validator option needs to be on blur, and you can see that I'm using lambda expression to set it all up. Use the Razor syntax, and vo.onBlur to be true. And what's going to happen here is that the null text is going to come up because there will be no value to begin with in the editor area, and then it's going to be set to be required to be true, and then the validator options will kick in every time there's an on blur on the control. Okay, so it wasn't a curly braces, it was a closing bracket, and I can put my semicolon back in here. So going back to our original problem that we need to bring in that person's first name into this text field, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the connection to my model by basically adding a reference to it. So model is my MVC jQuery videos .models .person object, and once I have a reference to that, I can use another extension of this HTML helper, which is editor4, HTML InfoGistics .TextEditor4. Now you can see that this TextEditor4 is very common for editor type controls and even for list controls. So you can bind pretty much a model property or a list to these controls, and it's going to grab the value that's been set. So in this case, we're going to grab the first name using the editor4. So I'm going to do editor4, and I'm going to say my model and grab the model's first name, which is the person object, because we know we're passing the model up here in our controller. We're passing the model right here. Once we have that, let's just render that control out. Close parentheses and run this thing. So as you can see that just by doing that, the editor4 extension, now I can grab data from my model directly into my editor control. And our standard text editor control is also here displayed, which is basically being initialized and rendered using the Razor syntax. And you can apply the same set of properties and other things to the editor 4. It's just an extension of the same editor that you see here, but it lets you bind directly to your model fields and lists. Thanks for watching the video.
Infragistics. On the web at infragistics.com.